Tracing the history of yoga. The history of yoga has a lot to do with present times. The earliest yoga started some 5,000 years ago, since human civilization has begun. The scholars have believed that yoga was originated out of Stone Age Sharma. This is because there were some cultural similarities between Maghreb, which was a Neolithic settlement, and the modern Hinduism. The Shamanistic culture of Magadha was in fact influenced by Hindu ideals, symbols, and rituals of the present. The ancient shamanism and early yoga had so much similarity for the reason both wanted to go beyond the human condition. Shamanism's primary goal was to heal the members who were in their community and at the same time act as religious mediators. Arhat Yoga also had the same objectives as they were community-oriented, and they aimed to determine the enormous order through senses and inner vision which they can be applied to our daily lives. As time went on, yoga has progressed and has regarded the innermost experience. Yogis then have focused on how to improve the individual enlightenment, recovery, and salvation. Yoga's evidences were first tracked in the archaeological evidence, which was found in stone seals exhumed from the Indus Valley. Yoga postures were traced and seen from figures which were illustrated in stone seals. The artifacts were placed on history books circa 3000 BC, which was linked to the great Indus-Saravati civilization, which was known to be the largest civilization that existed in the ancient world. The Indus-Saravati became a maritime society, exports goods all over Africa and the Middle East. They built up sewage systems and put up geometric brick roads and constructed multi-story buildings. The Vedas are known as the oldest scripture in the world, which were the ancient text, was brought by the Indus-Saravati civilization. It was a compilation of hymns that commends a high power, which include the oldest recorded teachings in yoga. They have considered this the divine revelation. The intelligence of the Veda is known as the pre-classical yoga or the Vedic. This was described by the realistic ceremonies that the yoga practitioners had been required in order to go beyond the limitations of the mind. The history of yoga would not have been complete in the classical stage of yoga. After the time of turn the millennium, yoga and its spread in different forms have come up with the need for standardization. This is important so that people will be aware with it and can be applied by them. Due to this, during the 2nd century CE, Patanjali has imposed and collected seminal text which was the Yoga Sutra, which had defined the classical yoga. At the age of classical yoga and the enormous history of yoga, it gave rise to some productive literature which has included the Tantra and the Hatha, which is famously known nowadays. These were taught in schools for yoga and practiced by many. Therefore, post-classical yoga is described to the adaptation of our present state. It is the time when yoga has evolved greatly and introduced to people. It has then been applied in the United States in the 1800s. Now, in recent decades, yoga has greatly and swiftly evolved. Swami Sivananda was one of the prominent gurus ever to master yoga. He has served as a doctor and he has generously opened up schools in Europe and America. Now, as we move on with yoga practices that we have today, it is much helpful and easier to understand if we look back on the history of yoga.